For our call out today, we're going to consider whether the NFL draft, but also the NBA draft or any of the sports league drafts, are generally run contrary to fundamental American values like free markets. So, in other words, are they anti American? For our call out today, Tunde, I'm going to ask you the question. Is the NFL draft or the NBA draft, are they anti-American? Because we as Americans, we take for granted the use of of drafts by sports leagues, right? Why do you think so many people aren't bothered by kind of how anti-free market it is? You come out of college and you're told where you got to work, you're told what your salary is going to be, and you have no choice in any of that. Like, that's not usually, hey, why can't I go interview with several people, get a bunch of offers, and then pick the offer in the place I want to be and so forth? If I'm coming out of school, why are we so good with this? We're so free market people.
I think we're not conditioned to appreciate indentured servitude for millionaires. So that's all I'm saying. Like, as much as we get, like, as you're leading up to, you're getting told where to work, what to do. I'm like, that's actually not fair. Oh, $9 million salary. Like, all right, I might put up with that.
Yeah, you'll deal with it.
So at 21, 23 years old.
So your answer is, let me get this straight. Your answer is that's what the money is for.
That's what I was going to say. That's really the American part, maybe, is the money makes it go away. That's the part.
It is, hey, we just did a book, talking to my daughter about the economy. That is what you just said, the triumph of exchange value over experiential value.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. So I didn't think we'd allude back to the first part of the book part of our discussion. But yeah, for the audience watching this, go watch that show or listen to it, because you'll laugh now that we're having this part of the conversation. That was a serious conversation. But that's, as you lead it up, I'm thinking like, because as Americans, we don't like to being told what to do. We like this idea of freedom. We like this idea of I get to go choose where I'm going to work once I'm done with my training, right? It could be at vocational school to be an electrician or a plumber. But when I'm done and I got my certificate, I'm going to choose where I'm going to, which electrical company or plumbing firm I'm going to. If I get a degree.
It's crazy. Imagine if people getting their MBAs got drafted by corporate America. Like, okay, you're going to go work at Procter and Gamble. You over here, you got drafted by this company that's on the border of bankruptcy. You're the top performer in your class. And so we're going to sit with this company that's on the verge of bankruptcy because we gave them first pick because they sucked last year.
So what if James, like it used to happen and probably still does with some, under the radar stuff, like what if companies then on purpose were trying to become bankrupt by the end of this year so they could get first place in the draft and get the best, software guy or the best.
People are going to tank for the best.
You get the kid with the best accounting scores, from his accounting degree out of Harvard or Yale. It's like, I'll be like, James, I want my firm to be like bottom of our peers this year so that I can draft this kid who's at Harvard now. He's a really sharp economist.
We're going to tank.
He's 22 years old. He's going to come to my firm and fix the whole thing.
Tank for Tunde, man. Tank for Tunde. There we go.
So let's say this way, James, to answer your question after we had some fun with it. I think that, it's a good point you make, because on its face, to say that the NFL or NBA drafts or Major League, any of our sports leagues, that the drafts are un-American flies in the face of my being an American when I first hear it. Because I'm like, hold on, what do you mean the NBA or NFL or MLB is an American? Baseball is America's game, you know what I mean? And so, but I think you're right. Again, that's why it's like the discussion we had about the book is just in my head, because it really is about these imagined orders. Going back to the book Sapiens that we did last year is that we don't know anything different than a draft system here.
Yeah.
We don't do it like the Europeans do.
We don't conceive of it. Like, if you force somebody to come up like college football does in college sports, they don't use a draft. So we could think of other ways to do it, but it's like we're accustomed to what is. And so we don't necessarily see the problem. And that's actually the biggest point of my question is like, why don't we even see this as an issue? Like, not if you sit down and have some intellectual conversation with somebody, you could point out reasons why they would be like, I'm not necessarily cool with that. But one, that's what the money is for, is I'm sure where a lot of people will go. And then two, we just don't conceive of that because we're always, it's inertia. What is always or oftentimes taken to what should be.
Well, I think what's interesting is this. Number one, because you're right, we have other examples around the world, like the European soccer leagues and their
Yeah.
basketball leagues.
No,
They
European
just have
soccer
a
leagues, those are
draft. There's a
billion dollar,
different,
some of those are billion dollar entities and
yeah,
they do not have a draft. Like
yeah.
you go
Oh,
sign
and the
players.
guys are getting paid $100 million contracts, just like here. Yeah, the money is there because they have a lot of people that watch soccer and make the same money on TV like American companies do. So, and sports leagues do. So you're right. It's just a different way of doing it. Even I would say within the United States. So, like, I'm a basketball guy. It dawned on me as an adult, after I got through playing college basketball and all that stuff, like, how come the NBA doesn't have a minor league system? I know they have the G League now. That's newer.
Well, they didn't then, though. Was your point?
But they didn't back when I played, and it made sense to me. Like, all these kids who weren't getting good SAT grades. You had the whole junior college system, and then you had this issue with kids leaving the NCAA. And long story short, it's just because no one in basketball dreamed, just thought of the way is kind of an inertia that they did it in baseball. And also, then you have other entities, things like the NCAA.
Which
they
were
would not want to
providing
give
a
up.
large part of that service for them anyway. So
Yeah.
they didn't. Yeah, you're correct. What was seen as good enough. Like if what wasn't working, then I'm sure they would have thought of, hey, let's look at what baseball is doing much earlier. But because it was working good enough, that they were like, why mess with it? So,
Yeah, so
I would say one thing, in addition to the two things that, like, when I thought about this, the two reasons why, one was kind of just that inertia piece is just kind of whatever is, even I think with college athletes getting paid, it's kind of thing like that was so blatantly illegal and immoral for so long that, everybody's making so much money, billion-dollar TV contracts. And I would say once the 80s hit is when the calculations started changing. When it's a fledgling enterprise, then it's not crazy that the football players aren't getting paid. But once you start putting it on TV, billion-dollar contracts, it's like, all right, though they're not football players anymore. They are TV performers. They're television entertainers. So that was right in our face for the longest time too. And it was just like, but that's what we're due. So, but it was very much like once the court started looking at it, they all were like, this is illegal, up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And it's not like it became illegal. It was illegal the whole time. It's just that nobody took, or very few people took a second look at it in that sense. And so I think it's similar here and I'm not saying the drafts are illegal. I think the way those are set up with collective bargaining, with a union and so forth, that's legal, but it's just interesting to me how so many things that we say we value, this would run contrary to. Like you pointed out another one. I talked about the free market part, but just freedom. Like, hey, I want to go live and work in Los Angeles. Like, no, you're going to go live and work in Green Bay. And it's like, that's cool. Like that's how we do things now. And so that's so the other thing, though, just I'll kick it back to you.
They want you to learn how to shovel your driveway.
But also, I think that we also, another thing that we like, where this is where you start making trade-offs in your own values. And so, you might think it would be good and pro-American values to let the guys go where they want to go and make the teams compete. Say, hey, we have the best program for you, or hey, we'll offer you the most money, or hey, we'll offer you the best developmental opportunity, or we'll offer you this other incentive. Make the teams compete like that. Some people may be drawn to that, but also there's a fairness in competition. And I think this appeals to people a lot too. Like, hey, because there's no other reason why you would give the worst performing franchises the best talent. Like, aren't they going to screw that best talent up? Let's worry about that. Like, our next stars are they might have poor medical staffs, poor coaching, all this. They may not become the people they need to be. So it has to be something also in us that wants to see fairness and competition. So if you had a bad year last year, we're happy to see you get a chance to pull yourself up. And so this idea of parody and stuff like that, I think that may be another competing value that allows people to kind of, and even people that are aware of how messed up this kind of is from an American value standpoint. I'm not saying it's fundamentally wrong. I'm saying for the stuff we say we care about, it's pretty contrary to some of that stuff. But I think maybe
let me jump in there, man, because we got a few interesting points there. One is, because you're right, I do think that the entertainment side of our sports leagues, and you said it well, obviously these players are players, they're athletes. But once it hit the TV in the 80s and it really became a spectacle, It did change.
An entertainment product, a television.
Yeah, this is no longer just a sport. Like you said, it is entertainment. And so I think that number one is.
Let me say one thing real quick. I'm so sorry, but I think personally,
killing me, bro.
I know, but I got to say, because you brought that up, I think personally, I've said this for a while, but I might as well say it here. I think that's the solution to their problems too. The solution to the problem for the NCAA is to pay the players based on the television money that their sport generates. Like, that is the easy, fast solution, is that, hey, whatever TV money that comes in for this conference football or this conference basketball or women's basketball, the players share in the TV money. And that would you could apply that universally across all divisions, everything, all women, men. If you put it on TV, you pay the players. If you don't put it on TV, then the players just get a scholarship. And that would be, to me, more consistent with this fairness in the system that existed prior to that. So I apologize for cutting you off, but you led into that. And that to me, it's such a simple system that I'm amazed that people haven't thought of that and kind of been pushing for that.
Yeah, sorry. It's funny. I had to lower my desk because it gave me a chance to get my dogs. So we're good.
So that's
the real world.
Out when I was making that point. You've probably heard that point before.
It's making some noise. Now they're okay. They're in the room with me. They're okay. I'll bring them up here for the audience to see. But no, that's what I'm thinking. So back to what you were saying was a couple things. Because I think that there's something to be said that, yes, these people, we all know that their salaries, right? We know that they're multimillionaires. So I do think there's something where we don't look at them as people that are being pushed around like they're coal miners being, abused by the big bad, owner of the coal mine, that kind of stuff.
But to be fair, I don't think we show too much sympathy for those people either.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a whole different conversation. So let me not jump around too much. Some people have more sympathy for those people. Let's put it that way. But I do think that then the idea of, like you're saying, so let's go to the idea, like you're saying, it's un-American. And this is a very interesting kind of way you've said all this, because yes, the idea of not having a free market for labor in a certain sense and not allowing people to choose their employer and be locking them into contracts, and even the ideas in the real world, not the sports world, of things like non-competes and all that have been challenged, because of people saying, I got a right to work. Like in Florida, we're a right to work state. So in one sense, that does feel un-American when you explain it like that. In another sense, though, it's very fascinating what you're saying, because we've been in our society in 2025, the year started off with a lot of discussion about things like meritocracy, right? And the idea of handouts and all that. And so what we're kind of, if I can reverse engineer this thought, is the way sports leagues are set up are almost like the socialism for the billionaire owners.
Yeah.
Like, so that
they share their TV money.
They all kind of get to none of them can fall real far based on their own bad things, because if you mismanage your team and run it into the ground, at least you'll always have high draft picks in the future seasons.
And you still get the TV money, but also conversely, no matter how good you do, you still have a ceiling on how good you can go. Like, they do set it up in a very socialist way.
Yeah, so that's what I mean is like, so in a certain way, and that's why I see all these tie-ins. I'm not trying to get too galaxy brain with it, but it's like, as a society, and I'm not saying all of us, but a critical mass enough where this has had the life we've been living, let's say, for most of our lifetime, probably since the 90s, and definitely since the 2000s, which is we accept socialism for billionaires and the 1% class, right? Like,
you don't want to go build a billionaire stadium, man? I thought you were all for that.
When I can get the city to issue a bunch of municipal bonds and put the city in more debt, and I don't have to use my money, even though I've got the money, then I do want to be that billionaire guy. And it's not just that. Like, it's things like when those at the top have created our economy, in the 2008 period, for example, the banks get all the bailouts. No one really scrutinizes them, and the public is the one not getting as much attention, right?
Yeah.
Or we got to go into debt for the nation more to get the public a little bit of help and give trillions more of stimulus that's unfunded, and it goes on the deficit. So those are all things that, to me, I just kind of realize as you're talking, like, I guess the sports league is very American in that sense, in the sense that the capital side is able to dominate the labor side, and we're okay with it. That's what I'm saying. It's just
Well, and also they're able to they're able to operate collectively. I mean, they're a cartel in that sense, and we don't bat an eye when they do all this stuff to try to make sure, like you said, to give themselves a hard bottom, even if it gives them a hard top. But if anybody talks about applying that type of mentality society wide, those are the same guys that'll be the first ones to be like, no way, So it's interesting. It's kind of I don't know that humans in general, so I don't have any opinions on Americans, how consistent we are, like how hypocritical are we when it comes to these things? Because a lot of times you'll see a lot of things where it's like, well, it's good for me, but it's not necessarily good for you. But I don't look at look at this just like this is kind of an American phenomenon. We say we're about a lot of things sometimes, like we're about voting. Well, who are you voting for? We're about, again,
equality
contracts. But, again, if your job is firing you, that's different than if you're saying, hey, I want to hold out. And you see this in sports all the time. I want to hold out for a better deal. So, we a lot of times, and we talked about this in other contexts as well, where we see people judging the actor of who's doing something as opposed to what they're doing. So if who's doing it is somebody that we'll make excuses for, then we're good with it. And if who's doing it is somebody that we won't, then we're like, no way. We're not going to consistently judge the action the same way. And I think we should do better with that, honestly. I'm not saying that not offering sympathy to coal miners is a good thing. I think it's terrible, but it's definitely something we see. And so I think that undermines the idea that it's because the professional athletes make so much money that we don't have sympathy with them. For whatever reason, many Americans just identify more and sympathize more with the billionaire than the employee. And for whatever reason that is, I mean, maybe that's just good marketing, man.
Yeah, probably.
But I think,
like, as you're saying it, like, because you know what it is, though? It is good marketing because, in America, that's the beauty of the American thing, too, is this big smorgasbord of kind of BS, right? Because we're so optimistic as Americans on the individual level that we could one day be that billionaire.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of, that's, I think, the great marketing from the billionaire class is, hey, one day, and this comes
keep
back
my
to
taxes low so that if you're ever like me, you will pay low taxes too.
Yeah. And I'm going to go somewhere here, which you're going to not be happy about, but I'll just say this is from 1800s, 1700s culture in America, which is the planter class. Telling all the other poor people, hey, one day, man, if you just keep this system intact, you'll be like me. You'll get to own some slaves. But even though you can't now, one day you will.
Slaves make it so that you make no money now.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep it in place now. And then in the future, you'll be like me.
Yeah, even though slavery is the reason why you're poor in the Appalachian Mountains, because all these slaves doing this work for free for me, and I'm never going to hire you and pay you. But if you keep this system up, it'll be good for you. Trust me. And it convinced millions of young men to go fight and die in a war for the side that lost. So that's what I say, and I say that.
So I guess it is an anti-American. It's very consistent with how Americans operate. It just may be inconsistent with kind of how we sell ourselves. Which I don't necessarily think, by the way, is a bad thing in the sense that maybe we should have kind of a way to aspire to better, and which we just need members amongst us to keep kind of prodding us to try to do better. It's like I'm not saying So, but I want to wrap us up, man.
No, I know. I just want to finish this, James. It actually is a part of the American story. You're right. It's a very anti-American strain, but they've been here the whole time, and that's kind of the point about
Well, but anti-American, it's anti-American. These values that we say we're about, but having values that are more aspirational. I would say America's a better place now than it was in 1790, in significant part because its values. It didn't live up to its values then. Now, obviously, it doesn't live up all the way now, but it's better now than it was then. Probably because
it strives.
We're still striving. We're setting the bar out far to try to get somewhere, and that's probably a good thing. If we were. I think it would be worse if we were looking back and be like, yo, let's try to make it worse than it is now. Let's go backwards and make things like they were before. That'd probably be a worse mentality. So
I can't resist. I know we got to go.
No, we got to go, man. We got to go.
As we have leadership trying to take us to the 1890s. So let's see how this ends up.
Yeah. But anyway. We appreciate everybody for joining us on this call out. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think. Check out part 1 of today's discussion as well, where we talked about the book, talking to my daughter about the economy and our whole library. And we'll talk to you soon.